This is a real bodybuilder food. Real bodybuilder food, a chocolate chip cookie. So I try not to eat like this all the time, but just once in a while I'll have a cookie. Because I was a good boy today. I was a good boy. Notice how I looked around to make sure there was no witnesses? Train the muscles, not the joints. Oh, look, berries. Mulberries. Mulberries. Oh yeah. They're almost ripe. Not quite yet though. They're gonna look like blackberries pretty quick here. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a big problem, man. This is like big problem. And it's another one of those BS sort of things that are perpetuated on the fitness industry in general, pretty much. I mean, basically where people assume that strict form is the only way to get results. Like you have to be super strict. So it's almost like you got to sterilize that movement, make sure everything is so strict where only that one muscle group is isolated in order for you to get the most amount of results. And absolutely all momentum is taken out of the lift whatsoever. Otherwise, you're not going to get any results. Now, that can be true in some cases as far as if you're primarily using the momentum to carry all the weight throughout the entire range of motion. But there can be times where you use momentum to get past that sticking point where the one part of the range of motion is super weak in comparison to the other parts of the range of motion, and therefore you can carry the set to a deeper state of failure. So when you do this, when you use momentum in this context, you actually get more results from it, and it's just a tiny bit, right? So sometimes momentum is necessary in order to get past those sticking points. Sometimes it's just a counterbalance thing. Like when I'm bent over rowing 400 pounds, obviously that weight's going to move my body. It's not that I'm swinging it as much as my body just gets moved because it's over double my body weight, or pretty much double anyway. So that's a factor that comes into play. So it's impossible for me to move the weight without somehow counterbalancing a bit and moving a little bit or rocking the body a little bit, because otherwise my body is not in the primary position in order to exert that much effort through the various muscle groups that have to all incorporate at the same time. So the bottom line is sometimes momentum can help you get more results. That's it. So don't buy into this thing of strict form is the only thing. Now, that said, then there are people that take this to the extreme where the entire movement is momentum, where they're just, swinging the weight all the way around. They're just swinging shit around. Obviously, I don't mean that. Obviously, I'm not talking about that. But what I am saying is that little bits of momentum once in a while can be really good. So don't let the form police tell you exactly that you have to be strict all the time. That's really my point. Because I've seen lots of people get even more stress on the muscle from not being strict. Sometimes you can actually get more stress because that little bit of a bounce at the bottom sometimes can actually rip that muscle fiber up a bit. Now, the disclaimer on all this is that if something injures you, then obviously it's too much momentum. You're doing it wrong for you. So, yeah. You always want to do it safely. You always want to make sure you listen to your body first and foremost. Some of the reasons why you might want to use some momentum in your training once in a while or for certain exercises is just because sometimes it helps you get that extra squeeze too, right? Like for instance, like back training. You'll notice that if you just use a weight that you can get the ultimate squeeze with and do super slow reps, you'll use a lighter weight than say if you use a little bit heavier, right? So the problem with this is that if you're using lighter weight all the time, you don't get that extra benefit of that heavy weight stretching at the bottom, right? So sometimes when you're stretching that heavy weight at the bottom, the benefit of having that extra weight on the skeleton and stretching those fibers far outweighs the fact that you can't really squeeze the muscle super strictly, right? So how you get a combination of both happening is you use a tiny bit of momentum just to get that extra squeeze at the top, but at the same time, you're still going strict during the stretch phase. So a classic example of this is that I've seen some guys over the years use super strict form with shrugs. I've seen them do super strict form with shrugs. And then I saw other guys over the years use like really not strict form, but use super heavy weight. And the guy that had the bigger traps was the guy that was using the heavier weight and was technically not doing it right. So this is one example of this. Now, another reason why you might want to use a little bit of momentum in your training is, say you have a torn bicep like I do from a long time ago, and the bottom part of your portion is super weak compared to the mid-range. So if you use a weight that you can only lift super strictly at the bottom, like say 15 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever, the main body of the muscle is not necessarily getting a real good pump or really getting challenged at all, because you're basing the entire exercise on the one weak link in the exercise, but that's not the full range of motion of the actual muscle itself. So sometimes using a tiny bit of momentum to get over that place that's artificially weak because of an injury will help you put more tension on the other part of the torque curve, or whatever you want to call it, when it comes down to where you have the majority of your strength. So just think of it this way: when you don't have the strength in a curl in the lockout position, but you have more strength in the mid-range to 30 degrees bend at the elbow, then that's where you want to put most of the weight. It seems stupid for that part of the range of motion to never be challenged, because the bottom part is the one that's the weak link. So mountain. I know this wisdom is lost on a lot of people on the internet that try to oversimplify stuff, but the bottom line is that you want to put weight on the muscle, and you want the muscle to be working efficiently. You don't want to make it artificially hard for the muscle to train, or artificially hard for the muscle to fire. Some people think that if they can bend themselves in half or bend themselves in a weird contorted position and then do an exercise, that it's somehow going to make more muscle. No, when that happens, when you put yourself in an artificially or super inconvenient position, what happens is that something else becomes the weak link, but not the muscle itself. So you end up not growing as much muscle. You're not using the muscle efficiently. So you do want to use the muscle efficiently. So yeah, in my case, sometimes with an injury like such as a dislocated shoulder, it changes the torque curve of the muscle. It changes, you know, what the weak part is and what the strong part is, or over accentuates it. That's a better way of putting it. So normally we're weaker at the bottom, but if you have a torn bicep or a torn muscle, you'll notice that you'll be artificially weak during certain ranges of motion. So you don't want that artificial weakness to prevent you from using real weight on the other parts of the range of motion where the muscle can actually get challenged. So in this way, a little bit of momentum can sometimes help. For the record though, one cookie is not like opening up a can of Pringles and eating the whole can while you're playing video games. Andrew, I caught him eating a whole bunch of Pringles. And what else? What was it that you were eating? You were actually combining it with some other type of thing, totally off any sort of bodybuilding program whatsoever. What's that about? I just had one cookie. See, I was a good boy. You're a bad boy. Bad, Andrew. Bad. I am Pringle shaming you right now. So yes, the momentum will get you past the weak link in your range of motion for a certain exercise of some sort. Or maybe it will get you through the range, so that way you can get a greater squeeze. So the question out there would be, is this not working the weak part of the range of motion? Is that going to be a disadvantage to you in the long run? So here's my answer to this. Now I know some of you would be saying, well, isn't it good to strengthen up that really weak part of the range of motion? And I would say, yeah, you can to a point. It's not like you don't train that range of motion ever. You can train that range of motion with some lighter weights and stuff. But what you don't want to do is leave a whole resource of muscle that you are not accessing in your training by being limited to one type of range of motion. And the other thing to bring up is that if you do have a torn muscle in a certain area or torn labrum, you can't fix torn. Like if something's just torn off, there's no way around that. Sometimes there's just no muscle activating during that range of motion that's supposed to. So you want to use the range of motion that's actually activating the muscle you want to hit. So yeah, you can do the full ranges here and there. You can do that kind of stuff. I mean, within reason, not the full ranges that injure you, but the fuller ranges, so to speak, with the lighter weights. But I think it's good for you to look at the fact that when you're using a little bit of heavier weight and maybe using a bit of momentum, just a tiny bit of cheating, it is a valid technique in order to access more muscle tissue. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, because of these exercise police on the internet that say there's only one way to do an exercise. Because the reason why these people are saying this is because they're heavily invested in trying to measure themselves against other people, but it's not because they're looking for the best possible way to grow muscle. It's just that they get butthurt when they see somebody else lift more weight than them, and then they're all pissed off about it, and then they're trying to come up with ways that you are insignificant as a human being because you lifted more than them. You know, it's more about that than it really is about finding the truth about building muscle. So like I said, use all the different techniques, and just because there's a tiny bit of momentum doesn't mean that that technique is not valid. So there you have it.
I have spoken. The mountain has spoken.
That sounded pretty official. It must be true. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and thanks a lot for the support from the Patreon people. And Andrew, I'm not going to let you off with those Pringles. You know, here I am having a treat. I'm having a treat. This is what a treat looks like, Andrew. This is what a treat looks like. You see, that was only just a little bit of ice cream. You know, a little bit of ice cream. Not the whole can of Pringles, right? You get it? All right. Enough shaming of Andrew. Like I haven't had a pizza or two in my time. Of course I have. So maybe I'll be doing a video on a cheat day or something like that, cheating meals, because some of you guys have been asking about that. So maybe Andrew's begging for me to make this video. That's why he's eating Pringles while he's playing video games with me. So, all right. Okay, guys. Well, I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot for watching. And if you need to get home, just go to naturalgallantbodybuilding.com and take care for now. Oh, yeah, and share my stuff. Share it. Mountain.